I'm good.
Okay.
Disclaimer: there is a difference between the mere existence of a social class and the idea that there is a class struggle resulting from a artificial class hierarchy.
Well, if he acknowledges that the classes are real, then how can he say that the class hierarchy is artificial? I don't get that.
Yeah, that's a terrible disclaimer.
This video exists to refute the latter of the two claims, as the former is self-evidently correct and therefore is not in dispute.
So I guess the classes are real, but the fact that they're in a hierarchy is what he disputes.
What isn't that the whole point of like classes in a societal context?
Well, in a Marxist
Like I know
context,
there are
actually, it kind of is. But I mean,
like I know there are non-hierarchical forms of like classes, like there's a class of scientists, a class of say engineers, things like that. But
yeah.
usually in society, realistically, there's going to be some form of eventual hierarchy when one thing is put above the other.
But I mean, so I guess he's recognizing that workers and bosses are different classes, but he doesn't think that one is subordinate to the other.
Yeah,
Because
that's
Well,
for sure
I
missing the
decided to
point.
keep watching it and
yeah.
see was gonna say.
Well, I mean, I know why he thinks that, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll find
Well,
out.
anyway, you hear that?
Oh,
Jesus.
That is the sound
Stop
of a
it.
thousand
Was that really
ideologues
necessary?
who
No.
lost the argument, throwing a temper tantrum as the last
terrible.
thing which they
Ugh.
cling on to desperately in order to gain
Jesus.
supporters is absolutely destroyed right in front
Absolutely
of their eyes,
destroyed.
effectively making
Absolutely
their
disgusting,
cult-like
more like it.
ideology fall
Wrecked,
apart from the
totally wrecked.
seams. Now, I know that I shouldn't worry about being accused of strawmanning socialism because I could literally read
All right,
Marx's
yeah, no one
writing
cares.
about class struggle directly out of Das
Well, if you
Kapital.
read it, you wouldn't be
Hang
making
on.
a video.
Did you hear what he just said? I could literally read about Marx's writing about class struggle and Das Kapital. How much does he talk about class struggle and capital? Like, isn't it about economics?
Pretty much. It's literally the why the fuck does everything gotta cost money book.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I would still be accused of strawmanning, so to save myself the effort and because I'm a lazy fuck, here is Bad Mouse Productions
All right,
Pause it
and
for a
and
second?
the Marxist perspective.
Can you pause that for a
Yeah,
second?
yeah.
Basically, yeah, you can read and you can know, but like if you don't know if you like straw manning is intentional, even if you know something, you purposely create a straw man even if you know better. So
I don't think he
I
really
don't
knows.
understand why he's gonna make a video when he's admitting that he's willfully ignorant of what class is. You know, he says himself, "I could just read about it." So why doesn't he do that?
Well,
It's stupid.
he puts in. We'll skip over it, but he puts in a video of Bad Mouse explaining it. So he does what, and Bad Mouse goes over the very basics at least. So
Yes.
yeah. So anyway.
To be deemed working class.
So, now that it's been explained clearly, and aside from the actual problems with this position, for anyone with a decent understanding of tactics used by politicians, particularly by those who turn out to be tyrants, there should be red flags flying immediately, because this is very blatantly a trick.
and also red flags flying, that's amazing.
I find this a weird claim. So he's saying that the class dichotomy is a divide and conquer strategy with class envy politics. So it's like the argument is that people only talk about class divisions as a divide and conquer strategy because they just I guess because socialists just want to come to power. But then, what do we want to do once we come to power if we didn't actually care about worker struggles in the first place? It doesn't really make much sense.
Yeah, I mean, plus like sociologists have to talk about class, considering that's how you can measure a society, and they're not ones who want to take power. They're just analyzing it as it is.
That's true. Yeah. Also, that reminds me, the right really likes to pretend that Marxism is the only conflict theory within sociology, which is basically the basis of the whole cultural Marxist meme, right? It's like any type of conflict theory is Marxism just applied to a different area of life, which is kind of silly, I think. But
Yeah.
used known as divide and conquer, the policy used by an order to maintain control over its subordinates, or in this case, population.
Subordinates.
Yeah, if he were to know that, wouldn't he, be a Marxist because we recognize that's what the state does?
Yeah, but it's like it seems like he thinks that politicians are using class divisions in order to get more power for themselves. But if that's the case, like if you're dividing people on purpose, that means you're doing it to both sides, right? But like, how could they be using that means you're doing it to the bosses as well as the workers. But if you're doing it to the bosses, then like you're using the most um powerful and wealthy and rich and influential class in society as a pawn. But to do what then? Because those are already the most powerful people, and then you're gonna make yourself more powerful than them. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like I'm pretty sure it's the capitalists that are like controlling the politicians, not really the other way
Yeah,
around.
yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
I
much.
mean, hell, the politicians are capitalists.
Yeah.
always then it'd be an actual democracy, but that doesn't happen.
Well, they're
Yeah,
basically, yeah.
ANCAPs have like completely disavowed democracy. I mean, the ANCAP subreddit is so enthusiastic about benevolent dictatorship, and I'm like, could you at least not call yourself anarcho-capitalists? Because holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they usually are ruling class. Okay.
By encouraging dissent between them. But now let's move on to the actual issues with this as a concept. First and foremost, the theory of class struggle makes the assumption that wealthy people are inherently exploiting their workers.
They are.
Well,
They are.
the capitalists are inherently exploiting their workers. Doesn't like wealthy people. If you just inherit money but don't do anything with it,
Yeah.
then yeah. But yeah, but owners are owners of capital are inherently exploiting their work. Yes,
Yeah.
but
Although this is, I think he pretty much means by rich, he just means the capitalist class. I mean, like,
yeah,
you don't, it would take a while to explain to a bunch of people, like, you can still be rich by not exploiting someone else. Like, I mean,
Right.
if I found the cure for cancer and everyone was paying me, like,
yeah.
like
But
just to
it's
copy
like
my idea.
when we say
Yeah.
they're inherently exploiting the workers, that's like an a priori thing because of the theory of exploitation being specifically about extracting surplus value, right? But I don't.
Right.
Well, we'll get into what he says.
One of the many problems that I find with Marxist
Many
economics
problems.
is that opposed to actually explaining something, what he
Explaining?
does is he likes to use weasel words, and
That's a really silly accusation. He explains everything in great detail. But he's basically accusing him of using weasel words by saying that extraction of surplus value is exploitation. When the problem is, I don't think people realize that Marxism is like a supposed to be like a scientific theoretical framework. They assume that it's just like another ideology where you just use any words that you want, any rhetoric that you think you see fit for the situation, which sometimes you do, but in this case, it's you might better call it not weasel words but jargon because it has a specific meaning within that theoretical framework, right?
Right. Also, shouldn't we take note that Marxism was developed in the 19th century and Marx was originally most likely speaking in German, so
Yeah,
I don't
there's
think
that
it's
too.
fair to
Yeah,
use weasel words. Some things might not translate very well because also even then Prussian German is going
yeah.
to sound very different
And if you
back
want
then
and
than
if
it
you
does
wanted
to
to,
modern High German
yeah,
today.
and if you wanted to criticize for sticking to the same words kind of dogmatically, I would. I mean, I would agree with him. We do that, but he's not really saying that here, though.
one of the more infamous weasel words that Marx and Marxists
Not a
like to
weasel
use
word.
is exploitation. It implies that somebody is being abused, but in reality,
It
all
does
that's
not
occurring
imply.
in this case is the
Whoops.
business owner off.
It does not imply that anyone's being abused. He's like I said, it's a terminology that's a part of a theoretical framework, right? Like he had to use some word. We have to use some word that we're going to consistently use to refer to extraction of surplus value, right? So
Right.
We could have used something else that had maybe less, emotional connotations or whatever connotations he thinks it has, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that it's a weasel word. Like, we have to have some kind of,
More or
consistent
less.
terminology, and he's just complaining about that because, yeah. Anyways.
Offers a job to anybody who'd like to come and fill the position. Then, someone voluntarily applies to work for the business
Voluntary.
owner and gets the job for the
It's
all
terms agreed upon
voluntary.
by both the
Starve
business
or
owner and
work.
the worker. And
I
the
didn't put a
worker
gun
is
to your
free
head.
to
It's
leave at any time.
voluntary.
Since this
We didn't break up
association
your
would
union
be
strike, it's
entirely voluntary
voluntary.
in
Yeah.
a capitalist society and no force is required, there
No force,
inherently
don't worry.
cannot be any exploitation.
What the
since
fuck
peop-
is imperialism?
Private property
Holy
doesn't
shit.
use force, don't worry.
I work at McDonald's because I want to.
We didn't take the land away from the farmers and the peasants, don't worry.
This is all a spook.
We don't hire
As
police.
I could say, very spooky.
I
Very
mean,
scary,
not that I'm saying
pure
that
ideology.
he wants to do that, but I mean,
Hey guys,
it's
I got
happening
to dip out real
regardless.
quick.
Pure
Just 1 sec.
ideology. Pure ideology.
people do not engage in interaction which isn't mutually beneficial
Mutually
due to the
beneficial.
self-serving nature of human psychology.
You're still starving, but you're starving slightly less, so it's mutually beneficial.
Consent is the bottom line in all interaction and what makes all
Consent is the
interaction
bottom
justified.
line.
For example, if somebody wants to lend money to another person voluntarily,
Voluntarily.
most likely agree that that interaction was justified. However,
interest.
if someone were to take the money from another person
Oh
without
no,
their
don't do
consent,
that.
you'd probably say that that wouldn't be justified, and you're
No.
absolutely right, because that's
I
theft.
might.
Both of these are the exact same interaction. One person has money, and the other person receives money from the exchange. But the reason one is justified and the other isn't is
because of
consent
consent.
between the two parties. And
Such
this
a
is the rule that
basic-
applies to all interaction. Using someone
Okay.
else's property, entering someone else's home, sex, social interaction, going places with other people.
It's a little bit different. Little bit different. Economics and yeah, a little bit different.
Well, economics and
So,
social
the
issue
idea that-
voluntary is a little different. But
Yeah.
like the economic order kind of controls what we do in the social order.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
like that's not to say we should ignore social problems like go all brocialist, but like
Yeah.
still like yeah, some false equivalences there.
There is any exploitation involved in private association is an absolute absurdity. However,
What do you mean it's a that's it's the label we use to describe something. You can't say it's absurd. Like it doesn't matter what your opinion is. That's the word that we're using to describe the extraction of surplus value.
Yeah.
What do you mean it's
defined
absurd?
it, so it's not at all.
We're defining
It's not
it
at
that
all
way.
in
Like
sort of
I don't know
sticky
what words he
idea.
wants. He wishes that Marx used a different word 150 years ago. Well, or they translated different. Well, too bad. We picked the word.
The language
Sorry.
works. That's how language works.
Yeah.
to be fair, I have heard socialists occasionally claim that the exploitation is in workers arbitrarily being paid or workers
No.
being paid the bare minimum of what their business.
Well, no, it's not about the bare minimum or arbitrariness. It's about the fact that the boss keeps anything at all above the value that the worker creates. So, no, not quite.
Business owners could get away with. The first claim is an absolute economic fallacy. Workers' wages are not arbitrary. Wages are determined by the equilibrium created by the supply and demand of an industry. The second claim
Partially,
is
at
ignorance
least,
of
yeah.
current events and how the market functions. In the United States, under 2% of the population are paid at the minimum wage. If it
So,
were the case that employers are deliberately trying to pay their workers as little as possible, it would stand to reason that more than 2% of the population would be on minimum wage.
why? Why would it stand to reason? That doesn't make any sense.
He
He's
doesn't
just
seem to understand of how minimum wage even came to be, because before that, yes, workers were paid way less
yeah,
than what their value was before.
yeah,
I like in the United States, it wasn't until like what early 20th century that minimum wage was a thing
yeah,
because of workers struggling to get to that point for an 8-hour
yeah.
workday for a weekend for the minimum wage. So I mean, he literally just doesn't know what he's talking about because he doesn't even understand how it came to be.
But I mean, of course,
More or less.
bosses
And
will pay
besides,
the
minimum wage is government mandated.
yeah.
Yeah, the only problem with minimum wage is if capitalists retaliate by raising prices, so we get inflation and the minimum wage becomes for naught.
But I
So
mean, it's a weird claim that he's making. Like, of course, the
yeah,
bosses do always pay them the least amount that they think they have to. Of course,
yeah.
but it's like,
I just
of course, they know about supply and demand in the labor market. No,
Mhm.
like who's
pretty
saying that
much.
they don't? It's ridiculous.
Although I'd say capitalists don't really even pay attention to that. They just in the modern world they want to make money. The businessman is still different from the economist in many
Yeah.
regards.
So it's
So
like, the boss is going to hire
they
an
kind of do
engineer.
economically literate stuff.
They know that there's a labor market with its own supply and demand for engineers. They're still going to pay them as little as they think they have to for a typical engineer salary,
Yeah.
right? That doesn't disprove anything. Just
And
because
again,
they
there's
have to
also the
take
fact
things
of
into
wage theft. I mean, that happens a lot.
yeah, yeah, that's true.
And so,
And it would affect more people than just high school students, recent high school graduates, or GED dropouts, or
Okay, this is a big load of bullshit.
yeah.
He's assuming
I
that
can already tell that's where he's going.
minimum wage workers are just like children, or what else did he say? People who are
like
still in
like
college.
GED dropouts and
I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'm sure you know the stats that I'm thinking about, right? Like
yeah,
it's,
and for an example, in McDonald's, the most people who work at McDonald's are between 25 and 50.
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, like again, I don't have the stats either, but I remember reading that in some study somewhere. But
yeah,
yeah, that's the reality. It's not high
yeah.
schoolers.
People are literally trying to survive off that
Yeah.
Exactly.
more and more.
college students. Now
Nope.
that we've debunked the worker exploitation argument, let's get
No,
into
you
the
haven't,
more
but okay.
technical part
That's
of the
not
argument,
even
which is
a
the
Not
close.
even
idea
an
that
argument.
rich people are rich and poor stay poor, simply based on their identities.
What?
According to Pew Research, 56%.
Like, go back. What did he say?
He said that he said that the left is claiming that rich stay rich and poor stay poor based on their identities. I
What does
don't
that even mean?
I don't know what based on their identities. I don't know where he gets. Why did he say identity?
I mean, if he's saying like black people tend to stay poorer, sure, I guess, but still,
I
That's
don't know.
racialist.
I have no idea what. Okay, well let's
Like if
just
there's
listen.
this whole like the whole idea that culture will give you wealth is just bullshit. I mean, Japanese, Gulf Arab, and white culture are pretty different, and they tend to be pretty rich.
I think what he really meant is just based on what you were born with, but I don't know why he would call that identity. It's very strange.
Yeah, that's the
Percent
confusing
of
part.
Americans are in the world's high income bracket inside of only a 7% margin of the world's global population. Also, another study showed
So he's saying that. What was it? Hang on.
I go back a bit.
Yeah.
of Americans are in the world's high income bracket inside of only a
Yeah.
7% margin of the world's global population.
So he's saying that 56% of the Americans are in the world's highest income bracket. But what the hell is that supposed to prove? That's because America is a wealthy imperialist country.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
even
Yeah,
the
it's
American
a
it's
first world
stealing the wealth from
country.
the other
So
countries.
yeah, so comparatively to like the rest of the world, sure, they're better off. That still doesn't mean like there isn't poor people within it. This doesn't still mean
Yeah.
like I mean like to counter argument. I read a recent study by MIT that was saying that basically most Americans live in third world conditions. So
Wow.
it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
I
and because
probably
like a lot
wouldn't
of those
agree
Americans are
completely with
like,
that one, but
yeah,
yeah.
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 Anyway,
I don't
yeah,
think it's
that's
that significant, but like I think considering the way ethnic minorities and like middle Americans, even white middle Americans, are kind of treated, it wouldn't surprise me. But I do think it's a little exaggerated because
yeah,
it's still hyperpower.
yeah. Anyway,
Also, another study shows that since 1981, the world's poverty rate has been cut in half. These two facts show us many different things, but most importantly, as it relates to this topic, it shows that economic.
I think someone else debunked the whole capitalism lifting people out of poverty argument, but that's
I,
an entire other thing. We don't even have time in this.
yeah, I think I
I'll put a
found it
link in the
on Reddit.
description.
Let me just
Yeah, I'll
yeah,
put
let
the
me
link in
just
the
see.
description.
Yeah,
Class is not an identity which is set in stone, and that there is a tremendous amount of wealth mobility, despite
Yeah, I
our
wouldn't say
society not
so.
even having a fully free market. Well, then, you may be wondering how I know that this meritocracy is a result of the free market. Well, aside from the fact that socialism as an ideology literally fucking advocates for the collectivization of
He's getting
property
mad.
and for economic equality based on outcome, directly in contrast
Based
to
on outcome.
opportunity, in the description, you will find a link to a study ranking countries with more economic freedom compared to less
I
on
don't
a
care.
series of charts which measure a society's prosperity. Take note of the fact that the societies with freer markets are also more prosperous. Also, there's a link
I
to a
don't know about
site
that.
measuring
Prosperous for
countries
who?
based on the amount of corruption.
Yeah, prosperous for who? Yeah, exactly. It's like GDP is a measurement of what? The fact that somebody's making money somewhere in the country, right?
Yeah, I mean it's
exactly.
like there's a lot of Indian billionaires, but
Y-
India is still like a
Yeah,
really
GDP is
impoverished country.
in economics, showing GDP is an actually pretty terrible measure for how well people are doing. I mean, it's usually just a country's size and ability to produce will make it high GDP, but like all of that GDP could, let's say, be military spending or really environmentally degrading stuff, and it doesn't say where the money's going to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's it going to,
Like China
basically?
is a perfect example. They have like probably one of the highest GDPs in the world, considering they make pretty much almost everything for first world nations. Um,
Yeah.
but still, there's a lot of poor workers and a lot of shitty working conditions, a lot of
Yeah.
shitty living conditions too.
Yeah.
That shows that countries with freer markets also happen to have a better track record with less corruption and better track records with human rights as opposed to countries with less
I'd like to
economic
see
freedom, which
source for
have
that
more
one.
corruption in their governments and are investigated far more
Pinochet did
often by the
nothing wrong.
UN for human rights violations. Socialism rather ironically creates this exact sort of hierarchy between classes by using the force of government to make everyone equal.
What?
People who produce all the products and services make the same amount and take in the
No, they
same
don't make
as
the same
people who
amount.
produce nothing and take everything.
That's
Capitalist are the ones who are taking everything. Just
they
wow.
don't make the exact same amount. There are wage tiers, even under worker states. So that's wrong.
Yeah.
Identity doesn't cause class, so what does? Well, I think this is an inconvenient truth, but I've already
Whoever said identity causes class? It's such a weird claim.
demonstrated with
I think
the
classes create
massive amount of
identities.
wealth mobility
He hasn't
that
defined what he
it
meant.
has to do with intellect and responsibility. But if you still aren't convinced of that with these pesky statistics, it becomes self evident when you look at an example of a time where poor people can suddenly run into a massive amount of money while still having the
The
same
lottery.
irresponsibility with their finances and not learning anything as they climb the ladder.
By definition, like a tiny exception, something that doesn't happen to most people at all. But Basically, he's trying to say that people are poor because they're just bad at money, and that's proven by the fact that they will spend their money too much when they win the lottery and become back to where they were, right? Which is
Yeah.
Right.
Did he also say, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but did he also say something like, your where you are in your income position has a lot to do with your intelligence?
it
Is that what he
seems like
said?
he's
Right.
trying to get at that, but well, hang on, let's just listen.
To their fortune. And the best example we have of this is the lottery. The vast majority of lottery winners are lower to middle class people, and 85% of them end up doing horribly irresponsible things with their finances after winning, such as quitting their job. And upwards of 80% of all lottery winners, as a result, will lose their money gained from winning the lottery. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm
Okay.
not saying that poor people are less intelligent by
So he's
any
not
means,
saying
but
that.
clearly,
Okay. All right.
if you manage your finances responsibly, you can become wealthy regardless of your background.
What?
Oh boy.
Oh man. So they're not stupid, but they're just not managing their wealth wisely enough. So like if an
Jesus, have you
African
seen
if a miner in like some African diamond mine only saved their, little scraps of
pennies?
pennies, they could own the diamond mine tomorrow. Okay.
Viva la revolution.
penny saved.
But have you not seen how big businesses just mismanage their funds? I mean, bailouts are a thing. Corporate bailouts
Fuck.
are a
I
thing.
mean, like the reason the market crashes is because usually there's like like say in 2008 bankers were like super irresponsible for what they were doing with the whole housing and was it priming, prime stuff too.
Yeah.
I don't quite understand it fully, but basically it was because bankers were like super irresponsible, which is why so many such their wealth like went downwards after 2008, and then the rest of the country in the United States and around the world too, wealth went downwards. So
Yeah.
it's not just poor people. In fact, rich people are also very irresponsible too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Let's finish this up.
I
Yeah.
mean, two-thirds of all billionaires are self-made, for God's sakes. How do you not see the writing on the wall here?
Oh my god. Okay, so he thinks that because most billionaires used to be like lower class or whatever, that means that anyone can be a billionaire? Like that is just
Damn,
terrible
I should become
reasoning.
one tomorrow.
It's interesting because like it says right there that Bill Gates is like one of the richest people in the world, even though he came from a
Yeah.
rich family already. The
Yeah.
Gates were a very wealthy family by the time he was
Yeah.
born. So
Yeah, I don't know if I got this from, I'm getting this from a pop culture reference, which I'm gonna kill myself if it is, but like someone said that everybody has dreams of, being a billionaire, but someone has to
Yeah.
take out the trash, scrub the toilets and stuff. And I'm like, there's not, like, not
Yeah,
everyone can be in
exactly.
a position
That's
of, not everyone can be in a position of power
yeah, like
because then
unless
who's gonna be
everyone
doing the
becomes a
grunt work?
billionaire just by massive inflation, it's like not
Yeah, and
everyone in the
then
world
those
can
billions will be
yeah.
worthless.
Not
They'll
everyone
be
in the world
worthless.
can live the lifestyle of a billionaire. It's physically impossible.
Yeah.
We would
too
run
much
out of
cocaine.
resources. Yeah,
Unless we
too
have
much
automation.
cocaine.
Yeah. Unless we have automation, but like again, if we have automation and
No,
everyone's a
but
billionaire, yeah,
even
I was
still,
going to
there's
say
not
if
enough
we have
resources.
yeah, I'm just thinking if we have automation theoretically,
Yeah.
and everyone could live like a billionaire, um, I'm pretty sure we'd do. I keep jacking up the prices up and up and up and up, so it will be worthless in the long run.
Not only that, we also drain the entire planet of resources too.
Well, yeah, we would need
And there's always
several more
Mars.
planets to keep
There's
up with
always
that.
Mars. Let's fuck it up.
Yeah.
There's yeah.